Thank you all for coming. Just a quick introduction. I'm a native New Hampshire person. I'm very proud of that fact. My grandparents actually lived on Rumford Street here, a couple blocks away for many, many years. My mother is a graduate of the Concord school system, and I currently reside in Moultonborough with my wife Debbie and my 4 children, 2 sets of twins. I've been there ever since I was a child, and graduated Kingswood Regional High School in 1980, went to UNH for a couple of years, served my country on the USS Alabama for 6 years, and then came back to the state of New Hampshire. I currently work as a commissioning manager of Risk-Frost Shumway Engineering, and I've been there for about close to 14 years. One of the things that started me on this campaign, as my children have gotten older and I start reviewing what I was like when I was their age in the mid-70s, I started thinking about some of the issues our country faced back in those days, and I can clearly remember when I first started to drive sitting in gas lines waiting for gasoline because of the gas shortages. And I can remember people in the country only could buy gasoline on odd days if they had odd numbered plates, and even days if they had even numbered plates. I can remember the war on terror. I remember the Israeli athletes slaughtered in the '72 Munich Olympics. I remember the raid on Entebbe and the airline hijackings that were rampant. I remember the Iranian hostage crisis. I can remember back in those days that there was a big concern, especially in my family, about how to pay for health care costs and how to get more companies to provide insurance and coverage for their employees. I can remember when I was first getting my paycheck and looking at the federal taxes that went out of there and all the discussions about balancing a federal budget and dealing with the deficit. 30 years ago. Here we are 30 years later, and I ask, where is the country on these issues today? Many people I talk to feel that we're worse off than we were in the 70s. Why? I had to think, why? Why are we worse off in many ways in those big issues than we were in the 70s? And one of the conclusions I came to is that the two-party system that we have come to depend on and has served us so well for so many years has lost sight of what its mandate really ought to be. They are so busy struggling for dominance and gaining position so that they can pass legislation in their viewpoint, and only their viewpoint, that they've lost sight of the fact that they're there to do the people's business. That 30% to 35% representation on either end of the party spectrum is not representative of the people. So I decided to think and say, what can I do as an ordinary citizen to try to change this, to make an improvement in the way the two-party system is currently operating? Because I don't see any real resolution in the near-term future. So I decided to run a campaign with absolutely no financial contributions. I decided to run with no party affiliation, and I decided to do it as a write-in candidate only. Intentionally, knowing how difficult this path would be, because I wanted to inspire people to become more involved, to take control of the elected process. Feeling that if I was willing to step out and do this, that someone else, maybe more qualified and more capable, could do the same thing. I firmly believe that we as a people, here in the state of New Hampshire and across the country, that we know how to fix these 4 big issues, that we have the skills and the understanding to do so. We know how to balance a budget. Our representatives know how to balance a budget. We have the technology and we have the resources here within this country to become energy independent. There's no doubt about that. We have the technology and the resources. We can develop a better healthcare system if we resolve to join together in open debate, put all the facts on the table, and do what responsible people do, and come up with a solid plan. We can win the war on terror as a nation, but only if we're united in purpose. In the long term, the resolution on the war on terror is not going to happen in the next couple of years. It's going to span presidential administrations, and we need to be joined together as a people in that effort. So what is missing? If we have the knowledge and the skills to accomplish these goals and solve these 4 big issues, what is missing? In my mind, what is missing is leadership, discipline, and commitment in our elected representatives. I hope to promote these values, if elected to Washington, by doing some simple, common sense things that I think all of us can relate to. One of the examples I give is that any piece of legislation, any bill, whether it's at the local level, state level, or federal level, ought to be able to pass 5 simple checks to be considered a good bill. Irregardless of what's in the bill, 5 checks that make it a good bill. First, it has to be constitutionally grounded. And if we look at the recent healthcare insurance reform bill, there's some great disagreement on whether parts of that bill are constitutionally grounded. Second, all bills should be based on public need versus public want. They should be prioritized based on what we need, not what we want. And that requires some open debate and discourse and all parties involved. The bill should be fiscally sound. It should be paid for when it's voted on. We should have a means to make sure that we can fund it. The federal government has no right to pass on unfunded mandates to the states. All bills should be clean. They should be able to stand on their own. They should not have to have earmarks to sweeten the pot. They should not be tied to other pieces of legislation so that they can gain votes. If it's not clean, it should go back to committee and get reworked. And last and not least, each bill should be understandable by the average citizen. A 2,700-page healthcare insurance reform bill is not understandable by anyone. We as a people are governed by the Constitution. Any one of us with a reasonable bit of study can understand what we're governed by when we read the Constitution. Those 5 principles, I believe, would go a long way towards restoring our government to the people. And that's why I'm running, because I believe those types of ideas, common sense approaches, are American principles, not Democratic principles, not Republican, not liberal, and not conservative, but American. We need to return and restore some of these principles because we know what works. We need to hold our representatives accountable for their performance and their results. And I would challenge the people of the state of New Hampshire. We're first in the nation in the primary balloting. Let's be first in the nation to lead a restoration of more responsible, respectful, and representative government. What I would like is to be elected. That would be really cool. But what I want is much, much more important. And I want the people to become involved with their government, to take control of the direction that we all believe it should go. I am Mark Whitman, Jr., and I am the other guy. May God bless America, and His grace continue to rest on the great state of New Hampshire.
Thank you, Mark. Next.